The sun bore down mercilessly on Pearl Creek, Texas, as 22-year-old Sophia Rose stood trembling at the altar in her mother's carefully altered wedding gown, the seconds ticking by with excruciating slowness. The once proud posture of the young woman began to crumble as whispers swept through the small church like wildfire. Her fiancé, Edmund Blackwell, was now 30 minutes late, and the pitying glances from the townspeople told her what her heart refused to accept. He wasn't coming. "Perhaps there's been an accident," Sophia whispered to her father, who stood rigid beside her, his weathered face a storm of emotions. She clutched her bouquet of wildflowers so tightly that stems snapped beneath her trembling fingers. The church doors swung open, and for one brief, hopeful moment, Sophia's heart leapt. But instead of Edmund, his younger brother Timothy stood there, hat in hand, his face flushed with either exertion or embarrassment, perhaps both. "He's gone, Miss Rose," Timothy announced, his voice cracking. "Edmund took the morning train east. Said to tell you he couldn't go through with it. I'm powerful sorry." The collective gasp that rose from the pews seemed to suck all the air from the room. Sophia felt the floor tilt beneath her feet as black spots danced at the edges of her vision. Her father's arm tightened around her waist, keeping her upright when her knees threatened to buckle. "My poor child," whispered the preacher, Reverend Miller, his Bible closing with a soft thump that seemed to echo Sophia's dying dreams. The silence that followed was unbearable, filled with pity so thick Sophia felt she might choke on it. She'd been left standing before God and everyone in Pearl Creek, abandoned like unwanted baggage. Tears welled in her eyes, but pride kept them from falling. She wouldn't give the gossips the satisfaction. "Well, I suppose we should all," the Reverend began, but was interrupted by a deep voice from the back of the church. "I'll say the vows." Every head turned. Standing in the doorway was Adam Kincaid, his tall frame silhouetted against the bright Texas sunshine. The 30-year-old cattle rancher removed his hat, revealing sun-streaked brown hair, as he stepped into the church. His boots echoed on the wooden floor as he walked forward, his eyes never leaving Sophia's stunned face. "Mr. Kincaid," the Reverend stuttered, "I hardly think—" "I know it seems mad," Adam said, his voice carrying through the stunned silence. "But I won't stand by while a good woman is humiliated." He stopped at the foot of the altar steps, looking up at Sophia with unwavering green eyes. "Miss Rose, I know we're hardly more than acquaintances, but I'm offering you a way to save face today. We can annul it later if you wish, but no one in this town need know you were abandoned." Sophia stared at the man before her. Adam Kincaid owned the largest cattle ranch outside of Pearl Creek. She'd exchanged pleasantries with him perhaps a dozen times, in the general store or at town gatherings. He was respected, if somewhat solitary, a man of few words but decisive action. And now he stood before her, offering the strangest rescue she could have imagined. "This is highly irregular," her father muttered, though Sophia detected a hint of consideration in his tone. "Why would you do this?" Sophia found her voice at last, barely audible. Adam's expression softened slightly. "Because no one deserves to be treated as you've been treated today. It's not right." Whispers erupted throughout the church again as everyone waited for Sophia's answer. Her mind raced. If she walked out now, she'd be the subject of pity and gossip for months, perhaps years. The abandoned bride, the woman not good enough to marry. Her younger sister's prospects might even suffer by association. But to marry a virtual stranger, a man she knew only by reputation and the briefest of interactions. Then again, hadn't Edmund been a stranger once too? A stranger who had courted her for months, only to prove himself a coward in the end. In that moment, something hardened within Sophia. Perhaps it was pride, perhaps desperation, or perhaps a flicker of something else as she looked into Adam Kincaid's steady gaze. "Very well, Mr. Kincaid," she said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "I accept your offer." A collective murmur of disbelief rippled through the church. The Reverend looked between them, clearly flustered by this unexpected turn of events. "Are you certain, my dear?" her father whispered. Sophia nodded, her chin lifted slightly. "I am." Adam climbed the steps to stand beside her, his tall frame dwarfing her 5'4" height. Up close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, from years of squinting in the sun, the small scar that cut through his right eyebrow, the clean scent of soap that clung to him beneath the dust of the trail. "Reverend," Adam said simply, "shall we proceed?" After a moment's hesitation, Reverend Miller reopened his Bible. "Very well, dearly beloved." The ceremony passed in a blur for Sophia. She heard herself repeating the sacred vows, felt the weight of her mother's gold band, hastily retrieved by her maid of honor when Adam confessed he had no ring to offer, sliding onto her finger. Through it all, Adam's voice remained steady and sure, as if he married strangers every day. "I now pronounce you man and wife," the Reverend finally declared, still looking somewhat bewildered by the proceedings. "You may kiss the bride." For the first time, Adam hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his features. Sophia felt heat rise to her cheeks as he leaned down, placing the briefest, most chaste of kisses upon her lips. The church remained in stunned silence as they turned to face the congregation as Mr. and Mrs. Kincaid. Sophia's mother dabbed at her eyes in the front pew, her expression an unreadable mixture of relief and concern. "I believe," Adam said quietly to Sophia, "that there's a wedding reception prepared at your parents' home." Sophia nodded numbly. "Yes, though I'm not sure." "Then we should attend," he said firmly. "Keep up appearances. We can discuss our arrangement afterward." As they walked down the aisle together, Adam's strong arm supporting her, Sophia felt the weight of every stare, heard every whispered comment. But with each step, she found her spine straightening a little more. She might have been abandoned by the man she thought she loved, but she would not be the object of pity in Pearl Creek. Not today. Outside the church, the bright June sun of 1879 seemed to cast everything in a different light. Adam handed her up into a handsome buggy she didn't recognize. "Borrowed it from the livery for the occasion," he explained, seeing her confusion. "My wagon isn't suitable for a bride." As he guided the horses through the streets toward her parents' home, Sophia finally found her voice again. "Mr. Kincaid." "Adam," he corrected. "I believe we're past formalities now, Mrs. Kincaid." The name sent a strange shiver through her. "Adam, then. I must ask again. Why did you do this, truly?" He kept his eyes on the road ahead, his profile strong against the backdrop of the Texas landscape. "Edmund Blackwell is a fool," he said simply, "and I've always had a problem with injustice." It wasn't a complete answer, but it was all he seemed willing to offer. Sophia sat in silence for the remainder of the short journey, wondering what strange twist of fate had taken her carefully laid plans and scattered them to the winds like tumbleweeds across the prairie. The reception at the Rose family home was awkward at first, with guests not quite knowing how to react to the unexpected groom. But as the afternoon wore on, the natural festivity of a wedding celebration took over. The food was plentiful, the music lively, and if the bride seemed somewhat dazed and the groom somewhat reserved, well, that could be attributed to the unusual circumstances. Sophia's mother, Harriet Rose, pulled her aside in the kitchen as she arranged another plate of cookies. "Darling, are you truly all right? This is most irregular. Mr. Kincaid is a respectable man, of course, but you hardly know him." "I hardly knew Edmund either, it seems," Sophia replied, surprised by the bitterness in her voice. "At least Adam had the decency to show up at the altar." Her mother squeezed her hand. "Your father and I will support whatever you decide to do. If you wish to seek an annulment quietly—" "I don't know what I wish yet," Sophia admitted. "Please, let's just get through today." The sun was beginning to set when Adam found her on the back porch, seeking a moment's respite from the curious stares and well-meaning but probing questions. "Your father suggested we might want to depart soon," he said, his deep voice startling her from her thoughts. "Unless you'd prefer to stay longer." Sophia shook her head. "No, I think I've endured quite enough celebration for one day." "Very well." He offered his arm, which she took after only a moment's hesitation. "I've arranged for your trunks to be loaded in my wagon. Is there anything else you need from your parents' home?" The reality of her situation suddenly crashed over Sophia like a wave. She was leaving her childhood home, not with the man she'd spent months preparing to build a life with, but with a near stranger who had stepped forward in a moment of crisis. "No," she managed. "Everything I'm taking was already packed for my departure." Adam nodded, his expression unreadable in the fading light. "Then let's say our goodbyes." The farewells were tearful on her mother's part, solemn on her father's. Her younger sisters, Mary and Elizabeth, watched with wide eyes as Sophia climbed into Adam's wagon. Not the borrowed buggy from earlier, but a sturdy farm wagon with her trunks secured in the back. "It's about an hour's ride to my ranch," Adam explained, as they pulled away from the Rose home, the wedding guests waving them off. "I apologize for the rough transport. I hadn't planned on bringing home a wife today." Despite everything, Sophia found herself laughing, a short, almost hysterical sound. "And I hadn't planned on being anyone's wife but Edmund's." She sobered quickly. "I'm sorry. That was unkind." "It was honest," Adam replied. "And I believe we should start as we mean to go on, with honesty between us." They rode in silence for several minutes, the only sounds the creak of the wagon wheels and the steady plodding of the horses' hooves on the dusty road. The sunset painted the Texas landscape in hues of gold and crimson, the distant hills darkening to purple as night approached. "I should tell you about my ranch," Adam said at last. "It's not the grandest in the county, but it's good land. 2,000 acres, mostly for cattle. I've got a decent house, 3 bedrooms, a study, kitchen, and parlor. My housekeeper, Mrs. Winters, comes 3 days a week. She's a widow from town, keeps things in order." Sophia nodded, trying to imagine this new life that had been thrust upon her. "And do you have family?" She realized with a start how little she knew about the man she had just married. "No living kin," Adam answered. "My parents died of fever when I was 16. I've been on my own since then." "I'm sorry," Sophia said softly. He shrugged. "It was a long time ago." I worked as a ranch hand, saved my money, bought my first piece of land when I was 22. Been building it up ever since. And you never married? The question slipped out before she could consider its propriety. A shadow seemed to cross Adam's face. Never found the time. After a pause, he added, or perhaps the right woman. Sophia looked down at her hands, still clutching the small bouquet she'd carried down the aisle. I should tell you that I understand the nature of our arrangement. I know this isn't a real marriage. You offered a way out of a humiliating situation, and I'm grateful, truly. But I don't expect... She trailed off, not quite knowing how to express what she meant. I made vows today, Adam said simply. I don't take them lightly, even under these circumstances. You'll be treated as my wife in all respects that matter. You'll want for nothing I can provide. You'll be accorded every respect, and your reputation will be protected. As for the more personal aspects of marriage, I make no demands. We can maintain separate rooms if you prefer. Relief and something else, something Sophia couldn't quite name, fluttered in her chest. Thank you, she whispered. The wagon crested a hill, and Adam pulled the horses to a stop. There it is, he said, gesturing toward the valley below. Kincaid Ranch. In the fading light, Sophia could make out a substantial 2-story house nestled among cottonwood trees, several outbuildings, and fenced pastures stretching into the distance. Smoke curled from the chimney, and lamplight glowed in the windows, giving it an unexpectedly welcoming appearance. It's lovely, she said, genuinely surprised. She'd expected something more austere, like the man himself. Adam made a non-committal sound and urged the horses forward again. As they drew closer, Sophia could see the well-maintained fences, the tidy garden beside the house, and the solid construction of the main building. It spoke of care and attention to detail, of prosperity earned through hard work rather than inherited wealth. A man emerged from one of the outbuildings as they approached, raising a hand in greeting. That's Samuel, Adam explained. My foreman. Good man. Been with me 5 years now. Samuel approached as Adam brought the wagon to a halt in front of the house. His weathered face registered surprise at the sight of Sophia. Evening, boss, he said, tipping his hat. Didn't expect you back tonight, and with company. Samuel, this is Mrs. Kincaid, Adam said, the words sounding strange, even to Sophia's ears. We were married today. Samuel's eyebrows shot up, but to his credit, he recovered quickly. Well, now, that's... Congratulations, sir, ma'am. He tipped his hat to Sophia. This is unexpected news indeed. For all of us, Adam said dryly. Would you help me with Mrs. Kincaid's trunks? And perhaps ask Mrs. Winters to prepare the master bedroom, if she's still here. Yes, sir, right away. Samuel gave Sophia another curious glance before moving to the back of the wagon. Adam helped Sophia down, his strong hands spanning her waist as he lifted her effortlessly to the ground. The brief contact sent an unexpected warmth through her, which she attributed to simple embarrassment at the situation. Welcome to your home, Mrs. Kincaid, Adam said formally as he released her. Sophia looked up at the house looming before her, in the gathering darkness, then back at the man who had so unexpectedly become her husband, a man who was still largely a mystery to her, yet who had shown more integrity in one impulsive act than Edmund had demonstrated in months of courtship. Thank you, Mr. Kincaid, she replied, matching his formality. Then with a small smile that surprised even her, she added, I believe you promised to call me Sophia. Something flickered in his green eyes. Approval, perhaps. Sophia, then. Shall we go inside? Taking a deep breath, Sophia nodded and took her first step toward her new life, leaving behind the shattered remains of her old dreams in the dust of the Texas evening. The interior of the Kincaid home surprised Sophia almost as much as the exterior had. While not lavish, it was comfortably and tastefully furnished with sturdy pieces that spoke of quality craftsmanship. The front door opened into a welcoming parlor with a stone fireplace, bookshelves lining one wall, and several comfortable-looking chairs. A doorway led to what appeared to be a dining room, and a staircase curved up to the second floor. "Mrs. Winters keeps things in good order," Adam explained, noticing her appraisal, "though I'm afraid my bachelor habits may show in places." Before Sophia could respond, a plump woman in her 50s bustled in from what must have been the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "Mr. Kincaid, Samuel just told me the news. Is it true you've gone and gotten yourself married?" Her eyes widened as they fell on Sophia in her wedding dress. "Oh, my stars, it is true. Mrs. Winters, this is Sophia, my wife," Adam said, the slight hesitation almost imperceptible. "Sophia, this is Mrs. Martha Winters, who keeps this house from falling into complete disorder." "Pleased to meet you, Mrs. Winters," Sophia said, extending her hand. "I apologize for the unexpected arrival." Mrs. Winters clasped Sophia's hand in both of hers, her face alight with surprise and curiosity. "No apologies needed, Mrs. Kincaid. This is a joyous occasion, though I must say I never expected. Well, Mr. Kincaid has always been so focused on his ranch, I'd begun to think he'd never—" She broke off, flushing. "Listen to me prattle on. You must be exhausted after your big day. I've just put fresh linens on the master bed, and I can heat water for a bath if you'd like." "That would be wonderful. Thank you," Sophia said gratefully. "I'll help Samuel with your trunks," Adam said, excusing himself and leaving Sophia with the housekeeper. As soon as he was out of earshot, Mrs. Winters leaned closer. "I hope you'll forgive my surprise, dear. It's just that Mr. Kincaid has never shown much interest in socializing, let alone courting. He's a good man, mind you, fair and generous as an employer, but keeps to himself. Everyone in Pearl Creek has wondered if he'd ever take a wife." Sophia felt her cheeks warm. "It was a somewhat hasty arrangement," she admitted, not knowing what else to say. She couldn't bring herself to explain the true circumstances. "Not yet." Mrs. Winters patted her hand. "The best ones sometimes are, dear. When the heart knows, it knows." She glanced toward the door where Adam had disappeared. "He needs someone. This house has been too empty for too long." Sophia followed Mrs. Winters upstairs to the master bedroom, a spacious room dominated by a large four-poster bed. Simple curtains framed the windows, and a dressing table with a mirror stood against one wall. An adjoining door presumably led to Adam's bedroom or dressing room. "This will be your room now," Mrs. Winters explained, lighting additional lamps. "Mr. Kincaid has been using the room across the hall, but I expect, well, I'll just prepare both rooms for now." Sophia felt heat rise to her face again at the implication. "Thank you, Mrs. Winters. That's very thoughtful." The housekeeper helped Sophia out of her wedding gown, exclaiming over the fine work of the seamstress and carefully hanging it in the wardrobe. By the time Sophia had bathed in the copper tub that Samuel and one of the ranch hands had carried up and filled, Mrs. Winters had unpacked one of her trunks, arranging her nightgown and robe on the bed. "Mr. King asked me to tell you he'll be up later," He's seeing to some ranch business with Samuel, Mrs. Winters informed her as she gathered the bath things. I've left a light supper on the table downstairs if you're hungry, and breakfast will be ready at 6, though I can come earlier if you prefer. 6 is fine, Sophia assured her, though the thought of facing her new husband over the breakfast table sent a flutter of nerves through her stomach. Thank you for everything, Mrs. Winters. After the housekeeper departed, Sophia sat at the dressing table, brushing out her long chestnut hair. The face that looked back at her from the mirror seemed both familiar and strange. The same blue eyes and heart-shaped face, but somehow altered by the day's events. 24 hours ago, she had been Sophia Rose, preparing to marry Edmund Blackwell, the banker's son whom she'd believed loved her. Now she was Sophia Kincaid, married to a cattle rancher she barely knew, sleeping in his home under the most unusual of circumstances. A soft knock at the door startled her from her thoughts. "Sophia, may I come in?" Adam's deep voice called. Hastily tying her robe more securely, Sophia moved to open the door. Adam stood in the hallway, still in his wedding clothes, though he'd removed his coat and rolled up his shirt sleeves. "I wanted to check that you have everything you need," he said, his eyes carefully focused on her face. "Yes, thank you. Mrs. Winters has been very kind." Sophia hesitated, then stepped back. "Would you like to come in? I think perhaps we should talk." Adam nodded and entered, his large frame making the spacious bedroom seem suddenly smaller. He remained standing near the door, maintaining a respectful distance. "I know this isn't what you planned for your wedding night," he began, his voice low and steady. "I want to assure you again that I expect nothing. The room across the hall is prepared for me." "I appreciate that," Sophia said softly. "This whole situation is unusual." A ghost of a smile touched Adam's lips. That's one word for it. Sophia moved to sit on the edge of the bed, gathering her courage. "I think we should discuss what happens next. You mentioned an annulment earlier." Adam leaned against the wall, his arms crossed over his chest. "That option remains open to you, if it's what you want. But I suggest we give it some time, at least a few weeks. If we were to seek an annulment immediately, it would defeat the purpose of today's actions." Sophia nodded slowly. "To save my reputation. Yes, I see your point. Beyond that," Adam continued, "I think we should present ourselves as a normal married couple, at least in public. People will be curious enough about our sudden marriage without giving them additional cause for gossip." "And in private?" Sophia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Adam's green eyes held hers steadily. "In private, we can be whatever we choose to be. Friends, I hope, at the very least. Partners in managing this household and the ranch if you're willing. As for anything more, that would be your decision, not mine." The sincerity in his voice touched something in Sophia. This man, who owed her nothing, had given her everything when she needed it most. Dignity, respect, and now the freedom to define the terms of their unusual union. "I think friendship is a good place to start," she said, offering him a small but genuine smile. After all, most strangers become acquaintances before they become friends. And most people become friends before they become husband and wife, Adam added dryly. "We seem to be doing everything backward." A surprised laugh escaped Sophia. "Yes, I suppose we are." Adam straightened from the wall. "I'll let you rest now. It's been a long day for both of us." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Sophia, for what it's worth, I believe Edmund Blackwell made the greatest mistake of his life today. And he hesitated. I don't regret what I did. Before Sophia could respond, he was gone, closing the door softly behind him. She sat for a long moment, staring at the door, her thoughts whirling with the day's events. Then she slipped into bed, extinguishing the lamp beside her. In the darkness, she allowed herself to cry at last, for the future she had lost, for the uncertainty that lay ahead, and for the unexpected kindness of a stranger who was now her husband. The first light of dawn was filtering through the curtains when Sophia awoke the next morning. For a moment she lay disoriented, the unfamiliar bedroom confusing her sleep-muddled mind. Then the events of the previous day rushed back, and she sat up, pressing a hand to her racing heart. She was married, not to Edmund Blackwell, as she had planned for months, but to Adam Kincaid, a man she'd exchanged perhaps 50 words with before he offered to take Edmund's abandoned place at the altar. The house was quiet as she, dressed in a simple blue cotton day dress, pinning her hair in a practical style. She had packed for life as a banker's wife in town. She would need to adapt her wardrobe for ranch living, at least for however long this unusual arrangement lasted. Downstairs, she found the kitchen empty, but a pot of coffee keeping warm on the stove. Through the window, she could see activity in the yard. Ranch hands moving between the barn and the corral. Samuel giving instructions to a young boy who couldn't have been more than 15. "Good morning." Sophia turned to find Adam in the doorway, already dressed for the day in work clothes, his hat in his hands. Unlike the formal, almost stern man of yesterday, this morning he appeared more relaxed, though still reserved. "Good morning," she replied, suddenly aware of how awkward their situation was. What did one say to a husband who wasn't really a husband? "I was just looking for Mrs. Winters." "She'll be here at 6. I'm usually up and out by 5, Adam explained, moving to pour himself a cup of coffee. "Would you like some?" Sophia nodded, and he filled a second cup, handing it to her. Their fingers brushed briefly, and she found herself noticing how his hands, though calloused from ranch work, were well-shaped and strong. "I typically have breakfast with the men in the bunkhouse," Adam continued, "but I can stay if you'd prefer company." "No, please don't change your routine on my account," Sophia said quickly. "I'm sure you have work to attend to." Adam studied her for a moment. "You're taking all this remarkably well." Sophia gave a small laugh that held little humor. "I'm not entirely sure it's real yet. I keep thinking I might wake up and find it was all some strange dream." "Not a dream," Adam said quietly. "Though I understand it must feel like a nightmare in some respects. To go from planning a life with one man to finding yourself married to another in the space of a few hours." He shook his head. "I'm sorry it came to that." "I'm not," Sophia said, surprising herself with the vehemence in her voice. "I mean, I'm sorry that Edmund proved to be a coward, of course. But I'm grateful that you stepped forward. The alternative would have been—" She trailed off, not wanting to think about the humiliation and pity she would have faced. "Still, it's a lot to adjust to," Adam acknowledged. "I want you to know that you're free to come and go as you please. The ranch is yours now, too, at least for as long as you choose to stay. There's a mare in the stable, Willow, who's gentle enough if you'd like to ride. And if you need anything from town, just let me know." Sophia was touched by his consideration. "Thank you. I think I think I'd like to explore the ranch today, if that's all right, to get my bearings. Adam nodded. Samuel can show you around after breakfast if you'd like, or I can come back mid-morning. He hesitated, then added, The men know we're married, but they don't know the circumstances. I'd prefer to keep it that way, if you're agreeable. Of course, Sophia agreed quickly. It's simpler that way. Adam finished his coffee and set the cup down. I should get to work. The men will be waiting. He moved toward the door, then turned back. Sophia, I meant what I said last night. This house has been just a place to sleep for too long. Make it yours if you wish. Change whatever doesn't suit you. Before she could respond, he was gone, leaving Sophia to contemplate the strange generosity of the man she had married. Mrs. Winters arrived precisely at 6, bustling into the kitchen with a basket of fresh eggs and a flurry of cheerful conversation. If she thought it odd that the newlyweds weren't breakfasting together, she gave no indication, simply setting about preparing a hearty meal while chattering about the ranch and its workings. Mr. Kincaid runs one of the finest operations in the county, she informed Sophia, as she expertly flipped flapjacks on the griddle. Not the biggest, mind you, but the best managed. His cattle fetch top prices, and he's never lost a herd to rustlers, which is more than most ranchers around here can say. Has he lived here long? Sophia asked, genuinely curious about her new husband's history. About 8 years now. Built the house himself, with help from the men, of course. Started with just a small cabin and a few hundred acres, but he's expanded every year. Mrs. Winters set a plate before Sophia. He's a good man, Mrs. Kincaid. Quiet, keeps to himself mostly, but fair and generous. The men respect him. You've worked for him all that time? Sophia asked between bites of the delicious breakfast. 5 years, Mrs. Winters corrected. After my Harold passed, God rest his soul, Mr. Kincaid offered me this position. 3 days a week, decent pay, and I can bring my grandson Tommy to help out sometimes. That boy you might have seen with Samuel, that's my Tommy. Mr. King's teaching him the ranching business. Says he shows promise. Throughout the morning, Sophia continued to gather pieces of information about Adam Kincaid from Mrs. Winters as she showed Sophia around the house, from Samuel as he gave her a tour of the ranch buildings, and from observations of her own as she watched the operation from a distance. The ranch was impressively well run, with everything in good repair, and a sense of order that spoke of careful management. The men worked efficiently, but without the tension she'd observed at other ranches, where the owners ruled with an iron fist. Adam, she noticed, worked alongside his men when needed, not above getting his hands dirty despite being the owner. By midday, Sophia had made her way to the garden beside the house, where Mrs. Winters explained that vegetables for the house were grown. It was well tended but practical, with neat rows of beans, carrots, potatoes, and tomatoes. I do what I can with it, the housekeeper said, but I'm here only 3 days a week. Mr. Kincaid has one. Of the hands, water it when I'm not here, but it could use a woman's touch. Perhaps you'll want to take it on. Sophia smiled, running her fingers along a tomato vine. Perhaps I will. My mother kept a garden, and I helped her often. Well, it's yours now, Mrs. Winters said cheerfully, along with everything else. The reminder of her strange new position sent a flutter of anxiety through Sophia. What was she doing here, playing at being a rancher's wife? How long before the charade became too difficult to maintain? What would happen when the truth inevitably came out? Miss Mrs. Winters must have noticed her expression, for she patted Sophia's arm gently. It's all a bit overwhelming, I imagine. New husband, new home, new life. But you'll find your place here. Mr. Kincaid isn't one for grand gestures or flowery words, but he's a man of his word. If he's made you promises, he'll keep them. Sophia nodded, grateful for the older woman's kindness, though she couldn't help but wonder what Mrs. Winters would think if she knew the true nature of their arrangement. The afternoon passed quietly as Sophia familiarized herself with the house, taking inventory of the kitchen and pantry, examining the linens and household supplies, and beginning to form ideas for how she might make the place more comfortable without overstepping. She had been raised to run a household, after all, and despite the unusual circumstances, this was now her domain, at least temporarily. Adam returned as the sun was beginning to set, looking tired but satisfied after a day's work. He found Sophia in the parlor, reading one of the books from his surprisingly well-stocked shelves. "I see you've discovered my guilty pleasure," he said, nodding toward the book in her hands. Sophia held up the volume of poetry. "Whitman. I wouldn't have guessed." A hint of self-consciousness crossed his features. "My mother was a schoolteacher before she married my father. She believed education shouldn't end just because one leaves school." He gestured to the bookshelves. "Most of these were hers. I've added some over the years." "It's a wonderful collection," Sophia said sincerely. "I love to read, but Edmund—" She trailed off, realizing too late that mentioning her former fiancé might be awkward. "Edmund didn't approve," Adam guessed, taking a seat in the chair across from her. Sophia shook her head. "He thought novels gave women unrealistic expectations. He preferred that I focus on practical pursuits." Yet he was fleeing a woman whose expectations proved far too realistic for his comfort, Adam observed dryly. Sophia couldn't help but laugh at the unexpected wit. "I suppose that's true." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the ticking of the clock on the mantel. Finally, Adam spoke again. "I hope today wasn't too difficult for you. I know this isn't the life you planned." Sophia closed the book, considering her words carefully. "It's different, certainly, but not in all bad ways." She glanced around the cozy parlor. "Your home is lovely, and everyone has been kind. Mrs. Winters especially seems determined to make me feel welcome. She's been after me for years to find a nice girl and settle down properly," Adam admitted with a small smile. "I imagine she's pleased, even if the circumstances are unusual." "About that," Sophia began hesitantly. "How much does she know? About us, I mean." "Only what everyone else knows, that we were married yesterday, rather suddenly," Adam replied. "The details are ours alone, unless you choose to share them." Sophia nodded, relieved. "And what about church on Sunday? People will expect to see us, I imagine." "They will," Adam agreed, "and we'll go, present ourselves as any new couple would. It will be the talk of Pearl Creek for a time, but gossip eventually finds new targets." "And when people ask how we came to marry so suddenly," Sophia pressed, "what do we tell them?" Adam considered this for a moment. "The simplest explanation is often best. We could say we've known each other for some time, and when your engagement to Blackwell ended, I stepped forward. It's close enough to the truth without inviting further questions." Sophia appreciated his practicality. "And my parents, they know the full truth, of course." "I'll call on them tomorrow," Adam said, surprising her. "It's proper that I should speak with your father," even if the circumstances are backward. And your mother will want to know you're being treated well." "That's very thoughtful," Sophia said softly. Adam shrugged, looking almost embarrassed by her gratitude. "It's what any husband would do." The word husband hung in the air between them, a reminder of their strange situation. Sophia found herself studying Adam's face in the warm lamplight, the strong line of his jaw, the small scar through his eyebrow, that she now knew came from being thrown from a horse as a boy. The crinkles at the corners of his eyes that appeared when he almost smiled. He wasn't classically handsome like Edmund, but there was something compelling about his features, a quiet strength that she found increasingly reassuring. Mrs. Winters had prepared dinner before departing for the day, and they ate together in the dining room, the conversation flowing more easily than Sophia had expected. Adam asked about her family, and she told him about her parents and younger sisters, about growing up in Pearl Creek, about her education at the Small Ladies Academy in Austin, where she'd spent 2 years before returning home. In turn, Adam spoke of his childhood on a small farm in East Texas, his parents' deaths from the fever that had swept through their community, and his years working for other ranchers before saving enough to buy his first piece of land. "I was lucky," he said as they finished their meal. "The previous owner was an old-timer with no family who liked my determination. He sold it to me for less than he could have gotten elsewhere, and he stayed on to teach me for the first year. Everything I know about successful ranching, I learned from Ezra Taylor." "He sounds like a good man," Sophia observed. "The best," Adam agreed. "He died 5 years ago. I named my best breeding bull after him, Old Ezra." A fond smile touched his lips at the memory. As the evening wore on, Sophia found herself relaxing in Adam's company. He was quiet but attentive, and there was an intelligence behind his practical manner that she hadn't fully appreciated before. By the time they bid each other good night at the top of the stairs, Sophia was beginning to think that perhaps this strange arrangement might not be as awkward as she had feared. Still, as she lay in bed that night, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the ranch settling for the night, she couldn't help but wonder what the coming days and weeks would bring. How long would this marriage of convenience last? And what would happen when it ended, as it surely must? With those unanswered questions swirling in her mind, Sophia drifted into a fitful sleep, dreaming of altars and vows, and a pair of steady green eyes that seemed to see straight through to her soul. The next few days fell into a pattern of sorts. Adam rose before dawn to begin his work, and Sophia typically breakfasted with Mrs. Winters when she arrived. She spent her mornings learning the rhythms of the ranch house, making small changes to its organization, and beginning to work in the garden. In the afternoons, she often rode Willow, the gentle mare Adam had mentioned, around the property, sometimes accompanied by Samuel or Tommy, other times alone, familiarizing herself with her new surroundings. In the evenings, she and Adam dined together, their conversations growing gradually less stilted as they became more comfortable with each other. After dinner, they often sat in the parlor, Adam sometimes working on ranch accounts, while Sophia read or sewed. It was a quiet existence, but not an unpleasant one, and Sophia found herself adapting more easily than she had expected. True to his word, Adam had ridden into town to call on her parents the day after their wedding. He returned, reporting that they were concerned but relieved to see that their daughter was being well treated. Your mother asked if she might visit next week, he told Sophia over dinner. I said she would be most welcome, of course. Thank you, Sophia said, genuinely touched by his consideration. I know this isn't easy for them either. Adam nodded thoughtfully. Your father mentioned that Blackwell left town. Apparently, he's taken a position at a bank in Dallas. Sophia felt a strange hollowness at the mention of Edmund. The man she had planned to marry had fled not only their wedding, but the entire town, leaving her to face the consequences of his cowardice alone. Or rather, she would have been alone, if not for the man sitting across from her now. Good, she said firmly. I hope I never see him again. Adam's eyebrows rose slightly at her vehemence, but he nodded in agreement. He doesn't deserve to see you again. The simple statement, delivered with quiet conviction, warmed something inside Sophia. Adam Kincaid might not love her, might barely know her, but he respected her. And after Edmund's betrayal, that respect felt like a precious gift. On Sunday, they attended church together as planned. Sophia wore her second-best dress, having decided that wearing her wedding gown again would invite too many questions. Adam wore a clean suit that she hadn't seen before, and Sophia couldn't help but notice how handsome he looked when dressed formally, his usually wind-blown hair neatly combed. As expected, their arrival caused quite a stir among the congregation. People who had witnessed the dramatic scene at Sophia's wedding just days before now watched with undisguised curiosity as she entered the church on the arm of a different man, a man who was now her husband. Reverend Miller greeted them warmly, though Sophia detected a hint of lingering confusion in his eyes. Mrs. Kincaid, he said, the new name still sounding strange to her ears. It's good to see you looking so well. And Mr. Kincaid, we don't see you in town often enough. My apologies, Reverend, Adam replied with a respectful nod. The ranch keeps me busy, but I hope to attend more regularly now that I have a wife to remind me of my spiritual duties. The easy way he referred to her as his wife, as if their union had been long planned rather than a spontaneous response to a crisis, impressed Sophia. Adam played the role of devoted husband convincingly, keeping a protective hand at the small of her back as they moved through the crowd, introducing her proudly to those who didn't know her, and accepting congratulations with gracious nods. Her parents were already seated in their usual pew, and Sophia felt a lump form in her throat at the sight of her mother's worried eyes. She and Adam joined them, and her father shook Adam's hand, with a firmness that suggested approval, if not complete comfort with the situation. You're looking well, Sophia, her mother whispered as they settled into the pew. The ranch agrees with you. Sophia smiled, realizing with some surprise that it was true. The fresh air and quiet routine of ranch life had put color in her cheeks that had been missing during the stressful weeks leading up to what should have been her wedding to Edmund. After the service, they couldn't avoid the curious questions and congratulations of the townspeople. Adam stayed close by her side, his steady presence a comfort as they navigated the social minefield. Such a surprise, your marriage, Mrs. Parsons, the town's most notorious gossip, said with barely concealed curiosity. I had no idea you two were even courting. Mr. Kincaid is a private man, Sophia replied, with a smile that revealed nothing. And some matters are best kept between those concerned, don't you think, Mrs. Parsons? Adam's hand squeezed her waist gently, a silent signal of approval at her handling of the situation. And what of poor Edmund? Mrs. Parsons pressed, undeterred. I understand he's left town. Heartbroken, no doubt. Sophia felt Adam tense beside her, but she maintained her composure. I couldn't speak to Mr. Blackwell's feelings, Mrs. Parsons, but I'm quite content with how matters have resolved themselves. Before the nosy woman could ask more questions, Adam smoothly interjected. If you'll excuse us, Mrs. Parsons, I've promised my wife a proper Sunday dinner at her parents' home. Good day to you. As they walked away, Sophia whispered, Thank you. She's relentless. I noticed, Adam replied dryly. You handled her well. The rest of the day passed pleasantly enough. Dinner at the Rose household was initially somewhat strained, with Sophia's younger sisters watching Adam with undisguised curiosity, and her father maintaining a certain reserve. But Adam's quiet courtesy and evident respect for Sophia gradually eased the tension, and by the time they departed in the late afternoon, even her mother seemed more at ease with the situation. As they drove back to the ranch in Adam's wagon, the Texas countryside stretching golden and green around them in the late June sunlight, Sophia found herself reflecting on how differently her life had turned out from what she had planned. You're quiet, Adam observed, after they had traveled some distance in companionable silence. Just thinking, Sophia replied, watching a hawk circle lazily in the blue sky above. A week ago, I thought I knew exactly what my future held. Now, she shrugged, the gesture encompassing the vastness of the changed landscape of her life. You regret it? Adam asked, his voice carefully neutral. Accepting my offer, I mean. Sophia considered the question seriously. No, she said finally. I regret that Edmund wasn't the man I thought he was. I regret the pain and embarrassment his actions caused, but I don't regret saying those vows with you. She glanced at his profile, struck again by the strength evident in his features. You've been kinder than I had any right to expect, given the circumstances. Adam was silent for a long moment, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. It was the right thing to do, he said at last, though I won't pretend my motives were entirely selfless. Sophia turned to look at him more fully, intrigued. What do you mean? A slight flush colored Adam's tan cheeks. I've admired you for some time, Sophia. From a distance, of course. I knew you were promised to Blackwell, and I respected that. But when I saw you standing there at the altar, abandoned by a man who clearly didn't deserve you, he shook his head. I couldn't bear to see you humiliated that way. And perhaps, selfishly, I saw an opportunity to do something I'd never had the courage to do before, to approach you. The confession stunned Sophia. You admired me, but we'd barely spoken before that day. I saw you often enough in town, Adam explained, still not meeting her eyes. At church, at the general store, at town gatherings. I noticed your kindness to others, your patience with your sisters, the way you always had a smile for everyone, even old Widow Jenkins, whom most people avoid. He gave a self-deprecating laugh. I sound like a fool, I know. Or worse, like someone who was watching you inappropriately. I assure you it wasn't like that. I don't think you're a fool, Sophia said softly, touched by his words. I'm just surprised. You never gave any indication. What would have been the point? Adam asked practically. You were engaged to another man. And I'm not exactly the sort women dream of marrying. I know my limitations. Sophia frowned at that. What limitations? You're a successful rancher, respected in the community? Any woman would be fortunate to... She broke off, realizing she was perhaps speaking too passionately. Adam gave her a sidelong glance, a hint of amusement in his eyes. "Thank you for the endorsement, Mrs. Kincaid. But we both know I'm not the most sociable of men. I spend more time with cattle than people, by choice, and I'm not given to flowery speeches or grand romantic gestures." "Perhaps some women prefer substance to show," Sophia replied, surprising herself with her boldness. "After my experience with Edmund, I find I value honesty and integrity far more than charm and pretty words." Something shifted in Adam's expression, a softening around his eyes, a slight relaxation of his jaw. "Well," he said quietly, "I'm glad to hear it." They rode the rest of the way in silence, but it was a different quality of silence than before, warmer somehow, filled with unspoken possibilities that Sophia wasn't quite ready to examine closely. That night, as she prepared for bed, Sophia found herself lingering at the window, looking out at the ranch, bathed in moonlight. Adam's confession had unsettled her, forcing her to reconsider their arrangement in a new light. He had not stepped forward merely out of a sense of justice or kindness, but because he had noticed her, admired her from afar. Perhaps even... She stopped herself from completing that thought. It was too soon, too complicated. They were still virtual strangers in many ways, bound together by unusual circumstances and a shared desire to maintain appearances. And yet, she couldn't deny that something was changing between them. Each day brought new discoveries. Adam's unexpected love of poetry, his gentle way with injured animals, his dry humor that emerged when he was most relaxed. Each evening's conversation revealed more layers to a man she had previously known only by reputation. A soft knock at her door pulled her from her thoughts. "Sophia, are you still awake?" Adam's voice was low. She moved to open the door, finding him standing in the hallway in his shirt sleeves, a book in his hand. "I thought you might like to borrow this," he said, holding out the volume. "You mentioned yesterday that you enjoyed Jane Austen, and I remembered that my mother had a copy of Persuasion." Sophia took the book, touched by the thoughtful gesture. "Thank you. It's one of my favorites, actually." Adam nodded, looking pleased. "I thought it might be. My mother loved it too, said it was Austen's most mature work." "Your mother sounds like she was a remarkable woman," Sophia said, noticing the way Adam's expression softened whenever he spoke of her. "She was," he agreed. "I think she would have liked you very much." He hesitated, then added, "Good night, Sophia." "Good night, Adam," she replied, watching as he turned and walked to his own room across the hall. As she closed her door, Sophia ran her fingers over the worn cover of the book, thinking about the man who had given it to her. A man who remembered a casual comment she'd made, who had kept his mother's beloved books all these years, who had stepped forward when no one else would to save her from humiliation. Perhaps, she thought, as she slipped into bed, this strange marriage wasn't quite as much of a business arrangement as she had believed, and perhaps that wasn't such a bad thing after all. The summer days lengthened and grew hotter as July arrived, bringing with it new rhythms to life on the ranch. Adam was often gone from sunrise to sunset, working with his men to move cattle to fresh pastures, mending fences damaged in summer storms, and preparing for the autumn roundup that would come sooner than seemed possible. Sophia, meanwhile, had established her own routines. The garden flourished under her care, providing vegetables for their table and enough to preserve for the coming winter. She had reorganized the kitchen to her liking, with Mrs. Winters' enthusiastic approval, and had begun to make small changes throughout the house. A new arrangement of furniture in the parlor to take advantage of the natural light, fresh curtains sewn from fabric purchased on a trip to town, wildflowers from the meadow arranged in vases throughout the rooms. Adam noticed these changes with evident appreciation, often commenting on how much more like a home the house felt now. His words always warmed Sophia, who found herself increasingly invested in making their shared space comfortable and pleasant. Her mother visited as promised, spending a day at the ranch and departing visibly reassured about her daughter's situation. Even her father had begun to relax his initial reservations, especially after Adam consulted him on a business matter, showing respect for the older man's experience and judgment. In town, the gossip about their sudden marriage had largely died down, replaced by newer scandals and concerns. When they attended church together each Sunday, they were now greeted as an established couple rather than a curiosity, and Sophia found herself genuinely enjoying their quiet Sunday afternoons, reading or talking in the shade of the large cottonwood tree behind the house. As July turned to August, the heat became oppressive, the land parched and thirsting for rain that refused to come. Adam grew increasingly concerned about water for the cattle, spending long days riding the property to check on streams and ponds that were dwindling rapidly. "We'll need to move the north herd closer to the main creek," he told Sophia one evening as they sat on the porch after dinner, seeking what little breeze might stir in the still, hot air. "There's still good flow there, even with the drought." Sophia handed him a glass of lemonade, noting the lines of fatigue around his eyes. "Is there anything I can do to help?" Adam took a long drink before answering. "You're already doing more than I had any right to ask. The men appreciate the extra baking you've been sending out with the noon meals." Sophia smiled, pleased that her efforts had been noticed. "Mrs. Winters showed me her recipe for hand pies. They travel well for the men to take out on the range. Samuel says the Barton outfit lost a dozen head to thirst last week," Adam continued, his mind clearly still on ranch business. "Shame. Old Barton should have moved them to lower pasture weeks ago." "But you won't lose any," Sophia said with confidence. She had come to understand that Adam's success as a rancher stemmed from his ability to anticipate problems and address them before they became serious. He glanced at her, a hint of surprise in his expression. "No, we won't," he agreed, and Sophia didn't miss his use of we rather than I, a small but significant acknowledgement that she was now part of the ranch's operation, even if in a supporting role. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun sank lower, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink. A family of quail scurried across the yard, the mother leading her chicks in a neat line toward the shelter of a mesquite bush. "You seem happy here," Adam observed, watching her face as she smiled at the birds. Sophia considered this. "I am," she said, somewhat surprised by the realization. "It's not the life I expected, but there's something satisfying about it. Seeing the garden grow, making this house more comfortable, knowing that what I do matters to the operation in some small way." "Not so small," Adam corrected. "The men work harder and complain less with good food in their bellies and someone taking an interest in their welfare. Samuel tells me you've been learning their names, asking after their families." Sophia nodded. It seems important to know the people who work so hard for the ranch. Mrs. Winters has been teaching me about each of them, who has children in town, who sends money to parents back east, who might appreciate extra attention, to a torn shirt or a favorite food. Adam studied her with an expression she couldn't quite interpret, something like admiration mixed with wonder. "You're a remarkable woman, Sophia Kincaid." The use of her married name still sent a small thrill through her, especially when spoken in Adam's deep voice. Over the weeks, their relationship had evolved from awkward strangers to something like friends, or perhaps partners in the shared enterprise of maintaining a ranch and a home. They still maintained separate bedrooms, still carefully observed the boundaries established that first night, but something was changing between them, a growing ease in each other's company, a deepening appreciation for each other's qualities. "Adam," Sophia said hesitantly, "may I ask you something?" He nodded, his attention fully on her now. "That day at the church, you said you'd admired me from afar. But if we had met under normal circumstances, would you have ever approached me? Courted me properly, I mean?" Adam considered the question seriously, as he did all things. "I'd like to think I would have found the courage eventually," he said finally. "But truthfully, I don't know. I'm not a man who finds it easy to express such feelings, and you seemed content with Blackwell. I thought I had no chance." "I thought I was," Sophia admitted. "But looking back, I wonder if I was more in love with the idea of him, the banker's son, with good prospects and charming manners, than with Edmund himself." "And now?" Adam asked quietly. "Are you content with how things have turned out?" Sophia turned to face him fully, struck by the vulnerability in his normally composed expression. "I find that I am," she said softly. "More than content, really." Something flickered in Adam's eyes. Hope, perhaps, or relief. He reached across the space between their chairs, taking her hand in his. It was not the first time they had touched. There had been the necessary contacts of daily life, hands brushing when passing dishes at dinner, his steadying grip when helping her into the wagon, but this was different, deliberate, meaningful. "Sophia," he began, his voice lower than usual, "I know our arrangement began under unusual circumstances, but I want you to know that I—" He was interrupted by the sound of hoofbeats approaching rapidly. Adam released her hand and stood, moving to the edge of the porch, as Samuel galloped into the yard, his horse lathered with sweat despite the late hour. "Boss," he called, dismounting in a hurry. "Fire to the west. Looks like it started on the Matthews place, and it's heading this way fast." Adam was instantly alert, all traces of the tender moment gone, as he shifted into the decisive ranch owner. "How far?" "Maybe 3 miles, and moving quick. The wind's pushing it toward our southwest pasture, right toward where we moved the young stock yesterday." Samuel looked grim. "Matthews and his boys are trying to contain it, but it's too big already, jumping from patch to patch." "Saddle my horse," Adam ordered, already moving toward the house. "And get every man who can ride. We'll need to move those cattle and cut a fire break." Samuel nodded and sprinted toward the bunkhouse as Adam turned to Sophia. "I have to go. If the fire reaches those cattle—" "Go," Sophia urged, understanding the seriousness of the situation. "Do what you need to do. Is there anything I can do?" Adam paused at the door. "Have Mrs. Winters prepare food and coffee. The men will need it. And keep watch from the upper windows. If you see the fire approaching the house, take Willow and ride for town. Don't wait for me." The gravity in his voice sent a chill through Sophia despite the warm evening. "Be careful," she said, suddenly afraid for him. Adam nodded once, then disappeared into the house to change into work clothes and gather what he would need to fight the fire. The next hours passed in a blur of activity and anxiety for Sophia. Mrs. Winters arrived within 30 minutes of being summoned, and together they prepared food and coffee for the men, packed bandages and salve for potential burns, and gathered blankets that could be soaked and used to beat back flames if necessary. From the upstairs windows, Sophia could see the glow of the fire in the distance, an ominous orange haze against the night sky. She thought of Adam out there, facing that destructive force to protect the ranch, and her heart clenched with worry. "He'll be all right," Mrs. Winters assured her, seeing her anxious expression. "Mr. Kincaid knows what he's doing. He's faced worse than this and come through." Sophia nodded, trying to take comfort in the older woman's confidence. "I know. It's just—" She broke off, not quite ready to put into words the depth of her concern, the realization that her feelings for Adam had grown far beyond the boundaries of their practical arrangement. Mrs. Winters patted her hand understandingly. "It's natural to worry about those we care for, especially husbands. My Harold used to say I'd worry him into an early grave, though the influenza got him in the end, not my fretting." Throughout the night, riders came and went, bringing news and taking supplies back to the fire line. The men were working to move the cattle to safety, while simultaneously cutting a wide fire break to prevent the flames from reaching the main ranch buildings. So far, they were succeeding, but the wind had shifted, making their task more difficult. Adam didn't return until near dawn, his face streaked with soot, his clothes smelling of smoke and sweat. Sophia rushed to meet him as he stumbled wearily up the porch steps. "It's under control," he said before she could ask, his voice hoarse from smoke and shouting. "We lost some grazing land, but the cattle are safe, and the fire didn't reach any buildings." "And the men?" Sophia asked anxiously. "A few minor burns, nothing serious. They're still watching for flare-ups, but the worst is over." Adam swayed slightly, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. Sophia took his arm, leading him inside. "You need to rest. I've kept water hot for bathing, and there's food whenever you're ready." Adam allowed himself to be guided to a chair, too tired to protest. Sophia brought him water first, which he drank gratefully, then began to help him remove his boots. "You don't have to do that," he objected weakly. "Let me help you," Sophia insisted, continuing her task. "You've been fighting fire all night while I've been safe in the house. The least I can do is make you comfortable now." Too exhausted to argue further, Adam surrendered to her ministrations. Sophia helped him remove his smoke-filled outer clothes, brought him a basin of warm water to wash his face and hands, and then guided him upstairs to his bedroom, where she had already turned down the covers and opened the windows to let in the cool morning air. "Rest now," she said softly as he sank onto the bed. "Everything else can wait." Adam caught her hand as she turned to leave. "Sophia," he murmured, already half asleep. "Thank you for being here, for making this a home worth protecting." Sophia's heart swelled at his words. She squeezed his hand gently. "Sleep well, Adam." As she closed his door behind her, Sophia acknowledged to herself what she had been gradually realizing over the past weeks. This marriage of convenience, this arrangement born of crisis and impulsivity, had become something else entirely. She cared for Adam Kincaid, deeply, genuinely cared for him. And if his words tonight were any indication, perhaps he felt the same. The question now was what they would do about it. Adam slept through most of the day, exhaustion claiming him completely. Sophia kept the house quiet, sent Mrs. Winters home with thanks once the immediate crisis had passed, and periodically checked on her husband, relieved each time to see him sleeping peacefully. Samuel reported that the fire was completely out by mid-afternoon, with men still patrolling the burned area to ensure no hidden embers reignited. The damage was less than feared. About 100 acres of grazing land lost, but no cattle casualties and no damage to buildings or equipment. "Boss did good," Samuel told Sophia, as she served him coffee and a hearty late lunch on the porch, not wanting to disturb Adam with noise in the kitchen. Kept everyone calm, knew exactly what to do. Without him directing things, we might have lost a lot more. Sophia nodded, pride filling her at the foreman's words. "He's a good man." Samuel studied her for a moment, then nodded as if confirming something to himself. "Yes, ma'am, he is that. And if you don't mind my saying so, he's been different since you came. Better, somehow. More at peace." The observation touched Sophia deeply. "Thank you for telling me that, Samuel." As evening approached, Sophia prepared a simple but nourishing supper that could be easily reheated when Adam woke. She was arranging wildflowers on the dining room table when she heard his footsteps on the stairs. Adam appeared in the doorway, looking rested, if still somewhat drawn from the night's exertions. He had bathed and changed into clean clothes, his damp hair combed back from his forehead. "You should have woken me," he said by way of greeting. "I didn't mean to sleep the day away." "You needed the rest," Sophia replied simply. "How do you feel?" "Better," Adam admitted. "Still tired, but better. Samuel reports the fire's out." Sophia nodded, moving toward the kitchen. "Completely out, with men still watching to be safe. I'll heat your supper. It's ready whenever you are." Adam followed her, leaning against the door frame as she moved efficiently around the kitchen, stoking the stove and setting the prepared food to warm. "You've been taking care of everyone today, I see." "Not everyone," Sophia corrected. "Mrs. Winters helped until I sent her home to rest. And Samuel has been managing the men beautifully in your absence." "And who's been taking care of you?" Adam asked quietly. The question caught Sophia off guard. She turned to face him, struck by the genuine concern in his eyes. "I'm fine," she assured him. "I wasn't the one fighting fire all night." Adam pushed away from the doorframe, moving closer. "You were worried about the ranch, about the men, about me." It wasn't a question, but Sophia answered anyway. "Of course I was worried. This is my home now, too. And you?" She hesitated, then decided that after all they'd been through, honesty was called for. "You matter to me, Adam, more than I expected when we made our arrangement." Something like hope flickered in Adam's tired eyes. "What we were discussing last night, before Samuel arrived with news of the fire," he began slowly. "I wanted to tell you that my feelings have changed too. What began as admiration has become something deeper, something I hadn't thought to find in this lifetime." Sophia's heart quickened at his words. "Adam, please let me finish while I have the courage," he interrupted gently. "You came into my life under the strangest circumstances imaginable, but these past weeks have been the happiest I can remember. You've brought warmth and life to this house. You've shown kindness to my men. You've faced an unprecedented situation with grace and strength that amazes me daily." He took a deep breath. "What I'm trying to say, Sophia, is that I believe I'm falling in love with you. And I understand if you don't feel the same way, if our arrangement is still just that to you. But after facing that fire last night, I realized life is too short and too uncertain not to speak the truth while we can." Sophia stared at him, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. This man, this strong, honorable, quietly passionate man, was declaring feelings that echoed her own emerging emotions so perfectly that it seemed almost too perfect to be real. "Adam," she said softly, closing the distance between them, "our arrangement stopped being merely practical for me some time ago. I've been afraid to acknowledge it, even to myself, but last night, when I saw that fire and thought of you out there—" She shook her head, emotion threatening to overwhelm her. "I was terrified of losing you, not my protector or the man who saved me from humiliation, but you, the man who reads poetry and remembers that I prefer peaches to apples and works himself to exhaustion to protect what's his." Adam's expression transformed, weariness giving way to a joy that made him look years younger. "Sophia," he breathed, reaching for her hands. She gave them willingly, stepping closer still. "I think," she said with a small, wondering smile, "that I'm falling in love with you too." For a moment they stood motionless, the confession hanging in the air between them, like the most delicate of soap bubbles, beautiful and fragile and perfect. Then Adam released her hands, only to frame her face gently between his calloused palms. "May I kiss you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Not like at the church, but a real kiss, a husband's kiss." "Yes," Sophia answered simply. Adam lowered his head slowly, giving her every chance to change her mind, but Sophia rose on her toes to meet him halfway. Their lips met softly at first, a tentative exploration that quickly deepened as Sophia's hands found their way to Adam's shoulders, then to the nape of his neck, drawing him closer. Unlike the chaste peck that had sealed their wedding vows, this kiss held promise and passion, and a future neither had dared to imagine when they had said, "I do," under such unusual circumstances. When they finally parted, both were breathing unevenly, and Adam rested his forehead against hers. "I never thought," he began. "Neither did I," Sophia agreed, understanding perfectly what he meant. "But I'm glad, so very glad." They might have stayed that way longer, lost in the wonder of their newfound feelings, had the pot on the stove not chosen that moment to bubble over, sending the sharp hiss of liquid on hot metal through the kitchen. Sophia pulled away with a laughing gasp, hurrying to rescue their dinner. "Perhaps," Adam suggested, watching her with a warmth in his eyes that had nothing to do with the stove, "we should eat, and then talk more about this new development." Sophia nodded, her cheeks flushed from more than just the kitchen's heat. "I'd like that very much." That evening marked a turning point in their relationship. They ate dinner together as usual, but with new awareness of each other, their conversation flowing more easily than ever before. After the meal, they sat close together on the porch swing, watching the stars emerge in the vast Texas sky, talking of their childhoods, their hopes, the gradual awakening of feelings that had surprised them both. "I think Mrs. Winters suspected before either of us did," Sophia admitted with a soft laugh. "She's been giving me knowing looks for weeks." "Samuel, too," Adam added. "He told me just yesterday that I'd done well for myself, even if it took an unconventional path to get there. And your mother? Sophia asked curiously. What would she have thought of all this? Adam considered the question thoughtfully. She would have been shocked by the circumstances, he said finally, but delighted with the outcome. She always wanted me to find someone who would appreciate this life, who would make a real home here. He took Sophia's hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. She would have loved you. Sophia leaned her head against his shoulder, content in a way she had never experienced before. And my parents, I think they're starting to accept our unusual beginning. Your father asked me very solemnly about my intentions when I visited them after the wedding, Adam confessed. I told him that while the circumstances were irregular, my commitment to your welfare and happiness was absolute. I think he believed me, though he reserved judgment at the time. And now? Sophia asked, tilting her face up to look at him. Adam smiled, the expression transforming his usually serious features. Now I can tell him with complete honesty that I intend to be the best husband possible to his daughter, in every way. If you'll have me, that is. Sophia reached up to touch his cheek, marveling at how natural it felt now. I believe I already did, at the altar, though perhaps under different assumptions than we have now. Then perhaps, Adam suggested, his voice deepening, we should renew our vows, not publicly, but between ourselves, with our eyes open and our hearts engaged this time. The suggestion touched Sophia deeply. I'd like that very much. In the soft glow of the porch lantern, with the chorus of cicadas providing nature's music and the stars as their witnesses, Adam took both of Sophia's hands in his. Sophia Rose Kincaid, he began, his voice steady and sure. I take you now as my wife in truth, not just in name. I promise to cherish and respect you, to be faithful and honest, to share with you whatever life brings us, the joys and the sorrows, the plenty and the want. I will be your partner and your friend, your shelter in storm, and your companion in sunshine, for as long as we both shall live. Tears pricked at Sophia's eyes as she responded, her voice soft but unwavering. Adam Kincaid, I take you now as my husband in truth, not just in name. I promise to stand by your side through all of life's challenges, to share your burdens and your triumphs, to create a home with you filled with warmth and love. I will be your partner and your friend, your comfort in trouble, and your companion in happiness, for as long as we both shall live. The kiss that sealed these private vows held all the tenderness and promise of their newfound love, a love that had grown not from the passionate courtship Sophia had once imagined for herself, but from respect, kindness, and the daily sharing of life's simple moments. When they parted, Adam held her close, his arms strong and secure around her. I never imagined, when I stood up in that church, that I would find such happiness, he admitted softly. Nor did I, Sophia agreed, nestling against him. But I'm so very glad that you did stand up, that you said those vows when everyone else was silent. Best impulsive decision I ever made, Adam murmured against her hair. Sophia smiled, thinking of how differently her life had turned out from what she had planned, and how much richer, deeper, and more meaningful it had become because of one man's courage and integrity in a moment of crisis. Adam, she said, lifting her head to look into his eyes. Yes? Take me to bed, to our bed. I'd like to truly be your wife now, in every way. Adam's eyes darkened with emotion and desire. Without a word, he stood, lifting her effortlessly into his arms. As he carried her into the house and up the stairs, Sophia knew, with absolute certainty, that she had found a love far truer and more enduring than anything she could have imagined. On that day, when one man's cowardice and another's courage had changed the course of her life forever. The years that followed brought changes to the Kincaid Ranch, some expected, others surprising, all weaving together to create a tapestry of life rich with joy, occasional sorrow, hard work, and abiding love. The drought of that first summer finally broke in late August, bringing relief to the parched land and the people who worked it. Adam's careful management during the dry months paid off. While other ranches in the area lost significant numbers of cattle, the Kincaid herd remained strong, even increasing with a successful calving season the following spring. Sophia's first Christmas as Mrs. Kincaid was marked by a special announcement. They were expecting their first child. The news was met with delight by the ranch hands, especially Samuel, who had become something of an uncle figure to Sophia, and by her family in town, who had fully embraced Adam as one of their own. Their son, Michael, was born in July of 1880. A sturdy boy with his father's green eyes and his mother's determined spirit. Adam proved to be a devoted father, often carrying the baby with him around the ranch when chores allowed, pointing out cattle and horses to the wide-eyed infant as if he were already training his successor. "He'll be a rancher like his papa," Sophia would say fondly, watching them together. "Or whatever he chooses to be," Adam would reply, though his pride in sharing his world with his son was evident to all who saw them. The ranch prospered under their joint stewardship. Adam's expertise with cattle combined with Sophia's organizational skills and attention to detail created an operation that became the envy of the county. They added acreage when opportunities arose, built a larger barn, improved the breeding stock, and gradually expanded their house to accommodate their growing family. A daughter, Elizabeth, joined them in 1882, followed by another son, James, in 1885. Each child brought new joy to the Kincaid home, which rang with laughter and activity that made Adam sometimes shake his head in wonder at how different his life had become from the solitary existence he had once led. "Regrets?" Sophia asked teasingly one evening as they sat on the porch watching 6-year-old Michael and 4-year-old Elizabeth chase fireflies in the yard, baby James asleep in his mother's arms. "Only that I waited so long to find you," Adam replied, reaching over to brush a strand of hair from her face, the gesture as tender now as it had been in the early days of their marriage. Though perhaps we each needed to follow our separate paths before they could converge. Sophia nodded thoughtfully. "I've often wondered what would have happened if Edmund hadn't abandoned me that day. If we would have been happy." "And," Adam prompted. "I don't think so," Sophia said honestly. "He wanted a porcelain doll for a wife, decorative, agreeable, without opinions or real involvement in his business. I would have withered in that life, though I didn't realize it then. For what it's worth, I'm grateful to Blackwell for his cowardice," Adam said. "It gave me the chance I might never have had the courage to seek otherwise." They had encountered Edmund Blackwell only once in the years since their wedding. It had been in Dallas, where they had traveled for a Cattlemen's Association meeting. They had been dining in a hotel restaurant when Blackwell had entered with a fashionably dressed woman. His wife, they later learned, the daughter of a wealthy Dallas merchant. Edmund had frozen upon seeing them, his face draining of color. Sophia had felt a moment of tension, wondering how she would react to the man who had once abandoned her at the altar. But when the moment came, she had felt nothing but a distant pity for him and gratitude for the path her life had taken instead. Adam had nodded politely but coldly in Edmund's direction, his arm protective around Sophia's waist. They had finished their meal in peace, and if Edmund had wanted to approach them, he had thought better of it. He looked unhappy, Sophia had observed afterward. Some men don't recognize true worth when they see it, Adam had replied simply. Their loss. Their family continued to grow and thrive. By their 10th anniversary, the Kincaid Ranch had become one of the most respected operations in Texas, known for its quality stock and fair business practices. The original house had been expanded twice to accommodate their growing family and the frequent visitors they hosted. Sophia's parents and sisters, neighboring ranchers, business associates, and the occasional Eastern buyer, looking to improve his herd with Kincaid breeding stock. Through it all, Adam and Sophia's partnership deepened, their love growing stronger with each passing year. They faced challenges together: drought, illness, economic downturns, the natural conflicts that arise in any marriage, with the same unity and determination that had characterized their relationship from the beginning. On the evening of their 20th anniversary, with their children grown or nearly so, Michael working alongside his father on the ranch, Elizabeth studying to be a teacher, like her grandmother had been, and James showing an unexpected talent for veterinary medicine. Adam and Sophia sat together on the porch of the home they had built in every sense of the word. "Do you remember what you asked me once?" Adam said, his hand finding hers as naturally as breathing after so many years together. "Whether I regretted making such an impulsive decision that day in the church?" Sophia nodded, smiling at the memory. "And you said your only regret was not finding me sooner." "It's still true," Adam said softly, "though I've come to believe that we found each other exactly when we were meant to." Sophia leaned her head against his shoulder, thinking of all they had shared: the births of their children, the growth of the ranch, the countless quiet evenings like this one, the passionate nights, the daily work and joy and occasional sorrow that had woven together to create a life richer than either could have imagined. "I think you're right," she said. "Everything happened just as it should have." From the abandoned bride standing humiliated at the altar to the contented wife and mother sitting beside the man who had rescued her that day, Sophia's journey had been unexpected but ultimately blessed. And as she looked out over the ranch that had become her home, at the life she and Adam had built together, she knew with absolute certainty that sometimes the most perfect love stories begin in the most imperfect ways. All it takes is one person willing to step forward and say, "I'll say the vows."